Hi everyone. My name is Anna. I'm with Evolving Web, we're here to listen to Shannon Lal talk to us about chatbots and MCP. This is something new to me. I'm not a technical person, but we're talking about model context protocol that allows enterprise data connect to Claude and ChatGPT. Exactly.
All right, guys. Okay, hey everybody, my name is Shannon. This is the second time I've presented here at EvolveDigital. I'm from Montreal. I presented a talk sort of related to this in Montreal. I guess it was probably in August. In its true form, I had a really great idea. I said, let's just do this talk, but I hadn't ironed out all the details yet. So there was obviously that amount of pressure to figure it out before the demonstration. For those of you who are familiar with MCP and ChatGPT, this is a constant evolving technology. And so when I pitched this idea as well, I thought, yeah, we've got this in the bag. And literally Monday night, we figured it out. So again, in true form, we were like kind of pitched an idea, but we hadn't had everything ironed out. And it was kind of a bit of a stressful period of time, but we've actually got it all working right now. So I'll give a quick demo of this today. So again, just a quick introduction about BCA, who I am. We'll talk a bit about a high-level MCP. I will give some demos as well. High-level architecture, kind of how if you wanted to bring this into your organization. I'm going to talk a bit about the integration pain points. So if you're thinking about, hey, how do I get access to this and actually work on this and build our own MCP? And then I'm going to talk about some of the new stuff coming out from OpenAI, specifically around this new concept called OpenAI's apps. This is something they're going to be launching in the next couple of weeks. They've got it in beta right now. You've seen stuff about like Expedia. I think Canva has some apps on there. And I think you'll start to see kind of the concept of like an app store being launched out. So just quickly, BCA research. So we've been in business since 1949, so about 75 years. We're essentially like an independent macro research firm. So our customers are hedge funds, wealth managers, asset managers. A lot of these big companies have their own in-house financial analysts, but they're investing, do we put $1 billion into gold? Do we buy Bitcoin? So a lot of times they want to kind of get an independent assessment, and they want to see whether or not what we think. So we have about 70 global experts. These are a lot of our chief strategists. A lot of times if you actually Google BCA research, you'll find it being linked in the news. You say, according to BCA research, this is a recommendation on the economy. So what do we provide? Essentially, we have the main bulk of what we provide are research reports. And those reports are obviously text-heavy with a lot of charts. This is something we do for 75 years. So we have 15,000 reports, 75 years of history. And what's key is that this data is not in the public domain right now. So it hasn't been trained on any of the LLMs. So there's we're getting a lot of questions from people saying, hey, is that data available? Can we train on your data? So we're starting to get a lot of that right now. The talk that I gave in August was about us going through the process of extracting our back catalog. We have, like I said, 15,000 reports. The catalog from 1949 to 2008 is scanned in PDF. So there were images scanned into a PDF format. So we went through the process. We talked in the previous talk about how we used OCR, object character recognition, with some AI tools from Amazon to extract not only the text out of it, but also the charts. So we just literally wrapped that up where we now have internally all of our text in a machine-readable format with all of our charts. And so the part of the process now is to bring this into a vector database. And for those of you who were at the previous talk, that's what we were talking about before. Okay, so let me just switch over. I'm going to do a quick little demo of exactly what we're talking about here, right? So for those of you who've been using ChatGPT, it's really cool. It's a very, very powerful tool. But one of the challenges, as we mentioned in the previous talk, was about RAG, was how do you get access to relevant data for large enterprises. Some of your key is you have your own data. You obviously don't want this data to be shared within the public domain. You don't want it to be shared right now. But so some organizations are trying to build their own chatbots, but they're just not that good, right? So you've got the team at OpenAI and Microsoft building their commercial-grade enterprise chatbots, but you're like, how do I get my data? Like, how do I get my employees access to this data right now? And so this is where MCP comes in. So what I'm going to demo today is I'm going to connect up an MCP, I'm going to use ChatGPT, connect into our back end, and have it pull in our documents right now. And so this is the concept of being able to touch and hook into your backend data. This is a enterprise-grade version of ChatGPT. So you can see in here, ChatGPT makes mistakes. OpenAI doesn't use vSAFE Research Workspace data to train its models. So this is a secure. All the enterprise versions have the security in place. So from here, so I'm going to ask it. This prompt is being very specific because it's data. I know exactly what I want it to do, but I'm going to ask it the impact of tariffs on, say, the Korean auto sector. So in here, I'm going to come in, and this is the connector. You can see it's in data. We're still working through it. But you can see in there the ability for those of you that have access to Outlook, SharePoint, Teams. You're going to see this explode over the next month. More and more companies are going to start pushing more and more of the connectors in there. There's a lot of questions about, the value of websites moving forward. Is MCP, is this agentic workflow of having people connect directly into your data the new frontier? So in this one here, so I'm going to run this. And I'll demo this out. So you'll see in here, I'm in a developer mode, which is a special mode. I'm going to talk a bit about that in a couple of slides. This takes about 30 seconds if it works. Doing a live demo is always a bit risky. There you go. Okay, so now it's prompting me. So I'm going to say search. So that's going to hook in. You'll see it do something called a tool call. This may only be in a developer mode. So for those of you who are interested in saying, how do I hook in my data? Let's see. There you go. So now it's doing a tool call. And in here, for more of the tech-focused people, you can see it's pulling in this in there, but you can see it's the query that it sent down.
That's so cool.
Right? So this is the query it sent down on the Mac results, and you can see the response it came back with. So this is the results, right? So here's all the data formatted right now. So you see this is the chunk of data that's pulling in from our documents and matches corresponding data. So now it's in there, and these are our production imports. Pull it in, see, right, so it hooks into, so this is an example of a production report that we have on this. Okay, go back to this.
Sorry, where is it pulling it from?
This is our backend data.
You're back in it, like, it's a bag,
Give me 2 slides and I'll show you exactly what that looks like. So just high level, model, what are we talking about, model? And for those of the more technical people who know more about MCP, I'm going to probably butcher the definition of this. But effectively, what we're talking about is, it's kind of like an API, if you will. So it's enabling an API, an LLM, to talk to your backend. But the problem with your traditional API is that it doesn't know the format as well. Yes, you have things like Swagger. It doesn't know when it should call it. It doesn't have all the right context as to when to do it now. So in the simplified terms, it's kind of like a fancy API, but provides more context to your AI to make its own decisions, and that's key. Right? So you're wrapping more detail. You saw in my prompt in there, I was saying this is the exact tool call. It's effectively a wrapper around an API in a very simplistic term, where you can provide a lot more context about this is when you should call it, these are the types of things, these are the type of responses, give it as much detail as you want to get a more successful call. Okay, so this is still very much right now. When I actually started this demo, it was not using ChatGPT and it was not using Amazon. It was actually using Copilot with on Azure platform. But it was just so new and the documentation was so in flux and constantly changing, we just pivoted and couldn't get it to work right now. And so the MCP protocol came out a year ago. So it's still a relatively new protocol that is still being fleshed out and defined right now. And you're in varying different formats of where these things are right now. This platform for ChatGPT has been constantly changing every week, but I'm sure over the past 2 months right now, it's just been in a constant state of flux every 2 weeks. And it will stabilize. I think this is now for the enterprise-grade customers, now kind of officially released. It's been in beta for a long time. But even the OpenAI apps SDK is still very much in beta. It's constantly in a state of flux. I see you taking a picture. I'm going to show now. Okay. I'm going to, again, just keep it very, very simple just from a communication point of view. So in the demo that I talked about before, in a nutshell, this is me talking to ChatGPT right now. You see it there. And then what's actually happening behind the scenes is I'm sending that request, that tool call, is going to ChatGPT servers. So that is your MCP client, which is running on ChatGPT servers. ChatGPT servers are now making a call into our backend. And really the 3 flows of this are initialize the call, get a list of the available tools, and in that list it has all the right details and information about what tools are available that it can call, and then it actually invokes it. So that's where it's passing that data. So that little dialog where I popped up with the details of the query, that's where it's actually invoking the call to the backend. Okay, so I'm just going to go over a very high-level overview of the architecture of where we stand. So right now, our backend is hosted on, it's kind of a mixture of some of the stuff is on the AWS, some of it is on Acquia's the Drupal implementation. So when I linked to our site, that was actually Drupal, hosted on Acquia. So in our flow, we have ChatGPT. We're right now using Amazon API Gateway to handle all the authentication and kind of making sure that it's a secure interface. I'm going to talk a bit about the auth flow in a couple of slides. And so what it's doing for our demo is talking to our backend, which is just a simple Lambda. And then it goes in and all of our documents are kind of stored in a mixture of Mongo and on the Acquia site. So from the previous conversation, if you were here, they talked a little bit about vector search. And the problem at a very high level, what we're talking about is that to find that description would have been very challenging because it was a long description. And it would have missed a lot because traditional search is only using keywords. So it would have show me all the documents that are referenced Korean. So what happens if they're talking about the APAC area or Asia? All those documents would have been missed. So with semantic search it does this vector right now where it does this vector search and says, I'm looking for similarities. So in the similarity search, it would have said Asia or APAC. And so that's why if you actually look at the documents, it would have even referenced some things like Japan because it might have said, no, there's like a proximity there to give you that. Right now. So it helps you improve your search quality results to give them a contextual information. Okay, so now we're doing on time. I'm good on time? Okay.
We still have 15 minutes.
Oh, okay, perfect. I can slow down a little bit. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about integrations right now. And as I mentioned, if you're getting into this space, it's kind of like you're going to get a lot of battle scars right now because it's still very much in flux right now. So I'm just going to talk about some of the challenges and things that I did, tips and tricks when you're getting into it if you want to build your own MCP server. So when you actually go through, and there's tons of tutorials, and I would say ChatGPT, Anthropic, the documentation on this stuff is pretty good. You literally, for the vibe coders in the room, I want to build MCP to wrap my thing. Super awesome right now. The results you're going to get are really, really good. But when you're actually trying to integrate that in, it took us a long time to get that to work right now because the documentation on ChatGPT was it was just not there yet. It's gotten a lot better, but it's been fluctuating every week, every day. But the key thing, it sounds silly, was curl. For those of you who don't know, it's a command line tool that allows you to connect your backend. Just this thing here was the most useful tool for actually validating and testing the connection to your backend for MCP. Because it gave us the ability to change the options and say, why is this not connecting? Why am I not seeing this? And honestly, it was like, going back to the vibe coders, I just grabbed the error, dumped it into ChatGPT. ChatGPT said, try this, I tried that. Literally, back and forth, and boom, it started working together, right? And so just that low-level detail, because like I said, in the flow before, when you're trying to do this connected to ChatGPT, it's going from ChatGPT to ChatGPT servers to your servers. So this whole integration piece in the middle, you have zero visibility. So it becomes really important to make sure that you don't have a silly little bug in your code somewhere, and you're like, why is this connection not working? Why am I not getting results back? So just validating with a basic curl flow is super important, super valuable. Once you've got your curl command, and literally this could be on your local laptop if you're just trying to get it up and running. There's a tool out there which is now your next lifesaver, which is the MCP Inspector. It's an open source tool, it runs locally on your machine. This is kind of like, okay, I know I can actually talk to it and get to the back end. Everything's working as expected. Now you can start to get into some of the more complex flows of using this tool where it actually does the flow of the initialization. You can see here it can list the different tools. You can now actually call the different tools and say, okay, well, make the call to the back end, and it'll actually show you the results you get back. So you can visualize the results and see and test. So this becomes your next flow. There's an entire authentication flow piece in here as well. So you can test this out now as you're building up. The key thing about this as well is that this is platform agnostic. So if you're trying to build one that says, I want to support Anthropic and Copilot and ChatGPT, this becomes your friend. Because this is following the standard and allows you to make sure that your data is working. Go ahead.
Because I've seen something like this on Figma.
Yep.
When I've tried to use, that was my kind of introduction to MCP, is trying to get Figma to communicate with Cursor.
Right.
And yeah, no, I'm just, that's the same thing, like that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
because it has the sidebar of Figma,
Yeah.
so someone from Figma built it into, got it.
And if you actually go through the docs, both Copilot, Anthropic, and ChatGPT will tell you use this tool. So
Then you go to Cursor and be like, I have a Figma. It's like, give me the URL, and it tells you exactly how to connect the two items.
Yeah. All right, then the next savior in this is now you know that your MPC is working, you're now able to make calls to it, you're actually able to get data, you've got the formatting in your MCP connector, is now you actually want to hook in and get the backend calls going. And this is where your developer mode, this is something that launched in September. Again, for those of you who have the ChatGPT Enterprise, for whatever reason, we pay a lot more money than everybody else does. But for whatever reason, we're like the last. Right, so this came out in September. I didn't get access to it until like October. They just, for whatever reason, they're just either they're risk adverse or whatever. But we are always like the last leader. ChatGPT launched 5.1 last week. Still don't have access to it. So for the developer mode and all these features, we're just sort of the latecomers to this whatever. But this is a tool. That tool and that I showed you before. This feature here is only available in the developer mode. So that you want to turn that on. So if you're at a point saying, okay, now I want to hook this in, get it integrated, and get it working, you want to turn on the developer mode. And it allows you to test and see the communication going back and forth, and this becomes your other diagnostic tool for this. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the visualization. I'm actually going to give you a demo. This one was the authentication flow. I did a video of this one because initially I was told use the laptops that are here, and then in the previous demo he was actually brought his own laptop. I'm like, I'll do a real one. I was okay to test the chatbot connection. The authentication flow one, I actually put in the URL string of our server, and I'm like, let me take a picture of my backend URL. So what I'm going to talk about is, let me see in here, is one of the big challenges with this is how do you authenticate your backend right now? And so from the MCP protocol, there's really two. I think there's three, but in ChatGPT Anthropic, there's really only two. One, there's no authentication, which is actually really, really helpful when you want to test internally. And the other one is basically SSO. So you've got to negotiate, you've got to get the whole authentication flow, auth flow working right now. And that has proved to be a bit of a challenge to kind of get it working. So I'm going to show the video then, and then I'll just walk through. So I think you can probably do it here. So you're going to come into here. You can see in here that you have a whole bunch of options you can turn off for your customers, you can turn on. We've got HubSpot, SharePoint, whatever. You can come into Create, and you're going to see a screen like this. And that's where you put in like the name, you can add in your icon, you can add in the URL to your server, and then you get into the OAuth flow. And like I said before, your options are no auth or OAuth. So right now, so the OAuth is a more tricky, an ideal and easier way to do this would have been sort of like an API key. Both Anthropic and ChatGPT don't support that. So it's either right now. So, and then you gotta acknowledge the terms and conditions. So I'm gonna show the flow. So this step here is in the video that I'm gonna show. I put in my information here, and then I collected next. And I record this just for risk. And actually, I think one other thing, because I did this last night, it automatically redirected me over to my Auth0 login screen. I entered my login screen, and then it brought me in over here. Let me put this one. So here it's telling me the scopes. So in Auth0 you can say, okay, this person's only allowed to use this, or only allowed to do that.
This is a demo of the process of you adding the connection.
Yeah, the connection right now, and going through the OAuth flow right now. So you can see that I came into here, I'm going to details. And then here from yeah. So depending on, for those just curious, who has it? ChatGPT Enterprise? Okay, sorry.
I think my company does, but
Right
I
now.
don't, yeah.
So like if you're actually wanting to build one for internal use case, and you're in the development mode building out, if you wanted to publish this to your workforce, like I know you guys are at usually Google, but if you wanted to actually do the same flow of say publish this to only your internal use case, you would go into publish. And this gives you the ability to give fine-grained control and access. Right here you can configure what are the flows. So it tells you, and I can show the screen afterwards, like these are the tools that are available. Search document, it shows you the schema that's there. And then the next one is role-based access control. So in this one, so here you have to acknowledge the risk to understand. Perfect. And then you come up to here. So in ChatGPT, you can do role-based control. So you can say that I want to create a role, and for us it's going to be say MCP. So if you're trying to say only certain people have access to this functionality or this type of data, from within ChatGPT you can sit in there and say, okay, here's a role for, let's say, for the library, let's say it was like the encyclopedia section or this section or whatever. You can say here, only these people have access to that. So you assign the role that they need to. And then in the user permission for ChatGPT, in the organization, if they have that role, they can see this. So now I publish it, so now anybody in my organization would have access to this if they have that role. And then in the last screen, I'll show you if you go back. See? And it'll pop up there. And that's it. You had a question or?
Well, yeah, Terry, I'll let you know.
Okay. All right. Right. Okay, special. So here, I initially, again, I thought I couldn't do a live demo, so I tried to kind of patch this together. This is the one that I didn't really want to share this out in a public forum right now. It's secure, but I was like, I don't want to share it out. But I try to walk you through the different steps of getting access to this flow right now. Okay. So I've got just two last things to say, and then I'll open it up for questions. So going back to this, one of the challenges, and we spent a lot of time and a lot of energy trying to figure this out, is if you go back to our original presentation, BC as a company, we do a lot of reports, and that includes both text and charts. And a lot of what we sell to our customers is being able to show visually, like say, listen, we think the market's going to go here. Look at this graph. This graph sort of is raw. This is the data. This is our case based on the fact that we think this market's going to drop. Where these two particular financial indices are splitting. So we were trying to figure out for a while how to get chart data displayed there. And so the MCP spec says that images are supported, but the client, so Anthropic, ChatGPT, or Copilot, is the one that's responsible for figuring out how to display that. And so right now, out of the box, the standard MCP is not, images in ChatGPT is not supported. I alluded to something called the apps, and this is something that's still in beta. I was literally trying to figure this out. I was working on my coworker's laptop in Montreal, but I couldn't get it to work on mine right now. I was getting done with this out. But we do have this working, and we're getting pretty close to this. So this is now you can actually have it come back with HTML and CSS. This is a new feature as part of the OpenAI Apps SDK, where you can actually see we're rendering charts and the data on the screen. So this is kind of like the next frontier where you're going to start to see as more and more apps come out there, where companies like Expedia and others are going to be, hey, I want to coordinate, I want to find the flights that are relevant. It'll come in with visualized data, maybe the picture of the hotel. Right now, you'll start to see more and more of this. It doesn't support JavaScript at this point, but it does support CSS and HTML. So you can render wrap the HTML and link it to the CSS that will display it. So just one final thing, and then I'll open up for any questions you have about this, is this looks all awesome and cool, but there's one thing that right now we're only charging this for internal use right now. There's a big unknown is for the people who have the enterprise customers, and the same thing from Google Gemini, is that in that workspace, in that environment, people who are using this, the data will not be trained within that environment. When we go and say, now we want to expose it to a customer, if they're on a ChatGPT enterprise, it clearly will say on their account, our data. So if we send back a report to them, a customer, that data will not be trained. However, what about a customer who's using a pro account, Teams account, free account? That's where the unknown of like, well, wait a second, we're not sending their data back, we're not sending our images back to that free account, because in theory that becomes like they just circumvented right now. So this is something that I think as the apps and more MCP connectors come online, this will become a big question that they're gonna have to figure out. We're like from a provider of this data, we would need to know some flag that says this customer account will not be used for training. We'd have to have some issues. So that's everything on my side. I'll be around afterwards right now, but if there's any questions, go ahead.
Okay, this is going to get really nerdy deep possibly, but
Yep.
I saw your architecture with the AI gateway, and then it splits between your DB, MongoDB, and
Yep.
the AI. Have you looked at using Light LLM as your AI gateway to do like the Guardian model in front of it to like say, is it this customer? Like, is that how you solve that?
So you could. There's also AWS and some of the other ones are calling it the agent gateway.
Okay.
They're coming up with right now, but there's still, we've been talking to Amazon about that. They're sort of saying, hey, you should try this out. Like I said, we've been banging our heads against this for 3 months, trying to get this to work, and we've tried different ones, and we were able to find a good working demo. It was actually Cloudflare with API Gateway with Auth0. The biggest challenge was the whole security apparatus between the two.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get all three of those things to work together.
How, so you're exposing all of your data to ChatGPT. When someone types in ChatGPT and you're like integrating with your app, how is ChatGPT so quickly able to scan all your data? I mean, is it like doing text embeddings for?
So what we've done in the back and the back, not to this. Yeah. So what we're storing, the reason we're storing using Mongo is that like I talked about at the beginning, all of our 15,000 reports, we ran through a process of having raw text.
Right.
So when we're loading the data into Mongo, we're loading in text, and we're running a vector embedding on all the text.
So what ChatGPT sees are all the existing vector embeddings you've already created.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're returning back, this is basically like an API calling, and it's running the query against Mongo. So it's hitting Azure saying, okay, do the vector embedding on this query string, and then we're doing a hybrid search.
Right.
So it's text and the vector embedding, and then we're merging the results together.
Wow. And the results that you get back in the chat, is it, like, because you were talking about the visualizations too.
Yeah.
What I'm confused on is do you expect a customer to interact with this chatbot and get back snippets of these actual reports? And like ChatGPT will just like literally take an image that was from that report and put it in the chat window?
So it should be bringing back in the raw the sections of the text, because the problem, and we're still trying to figure this out, is if let's say we return back 15 documents,
Right.
but how much of that section of those documents were actually relevant to the question?
Right.
Right. So then there's a big problem with these LLMs is that if the context windows gets too big, it's like they just lose. Like they're saying, even though these LLMs have like 1 million context windows, there's like a performance degrade where you fill them up too big and it just can't pick right now. So you want to have smaller context windows with just the most relevant information. So from what I'm seeing, it's like it's small, short context elements that you can pull in and pick and choose from.
Given how this was set up, how easy is it to switch from OpenAI to complexity to Claude, or like, how modular is it that you can switch out?
So on this part here, when you're loading the data, like you're kind of stuck on OpenAI because we embedded all the data. We could rip that out and just re-embed everything. It wasn't that expensive to do, but where we're having right now is we have access to Bedrock and we have access to Azure. So from a development point of view, we're using heavily Anthropic's Claude with AWS, and then from this we're using OpenAI. Oh,
Sorry,
we're using
Are we
Which
gonna
one?
get kicked out?
for development, and we still use it for some of our RAG stuff internally. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Thanks, guys. Cool. Thanks.